Bridget, most people think that they have to leave their money in their retirement plans until age 59 and a half before they can take it out. But on today's episode of Friends Talk Financial Planning, we're going to talk about ways that you can access that money before age 59 and a half that not many people know about. Hi, I'm John Shearer, and I run a fee-only financial planning practice in Middleton, Wisconsin.
And I'm Bridget Sullivan-Mermel. I've got a fee-only financial planning practice in Chicago, Illinois. Before we talk about getting money out of your IRA before you're 59, let's have you subscribe. It helps us get credibility with YouTube. All right, John, so let's talk. We have somebody that is, let's say they're 50. Let's start with 50. Okay, so let's start. I'm 50. I want to take money out of my I need some money for my retirement accounts. How do you proceed?
Yeah. You know what? It's interesting that I think about this, Bridget. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine a while back, and he's a couple of years older than 50, but he's, I got, 7 years left, and then I can retire. And I said, oh, really? Why is that? Well, then that's when I can access my money. Then I'll be 60 years old, so I'll be over the limit where I can get to my retirement plan, my 401k. And I go, oh, interesting, right? And again, that generally is the rule, right? It's sort of the blanket thing is, listen, and what happens if I take money out of my retirement plan to spend it before I'm 59 and a half? In general, there's a 10% penalty that goes along with that, right? And so that's this incentive, and people, sometimes people don't even know that, like, hey, wait a minute, know that rule. But then there are some exceptions and some ways that you can access that, so it's not just locked away until that age. And the one that is the big one for me, and it was from this friend of mine that I was talking with, is if you retire from your employer at age 55 or later, then the money that's in that retirement plan isn't subject to the 10% penalty anymore. It's basically an age 55 rule from the current employer's retirement plan, 403B or 401k sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
So that's one of those people just, so many people haven't even heard that, and that's really important information to know about.
Right, because that takes us from 59 to 55.
Right.
But there's ways, even if you're 55 or younger, to get it out. Why don't we talk through that?
Sure. And before we jump over onto those, I just wanted to point out on that age 55 one for a second, is that it's only from the company plan that you worked for. So if I retire, if I'm 56, I retire, I leave a company, and I roll that money into my 401 or to my IRA. IRAs don't have that option, right?
Well, yeah, but I bet you could put the money, like if you kept your if you kept your 401k at your current employer, but you could probably roll over into that 401k, old 401ks. Like if you had some that weren't in there already, they'll accept.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
you could probably put most of your money in that 401k, the 401k type money.
But then you have to leave it there, right? And in our world, and for you and I, for a lot of people that are in the financial planning side of things, what do they recommend when somebody leaves their job? What do? Automatic, roll your 401k over to an IRA so I can manage it for you, right? I mean, that's the default. And I mean, most of the time that makes sense. But in this case, right, you lose a huge opportunity if you roll your 401k over to an IRA after if you retire after 55. And the other place, and I love the idea of, hey, listen, Kinsella, most 401ks will take old IRA money. It's a great place to put money then, right? Because then you have access to it.
Right.
The other thing I just want to point out about that rule, though, is that it's not, I have to leave the employer when I'm 55 or older. So if I'm 54 and I say, you know what, I'm leaving this employer and I'll leave my money in that 401k, and then in next year when I turn 55, I can take it out. Doesn't work that way, right? You have to leave the employer. You have to be 55 when you leave the employer. So again, it only fits a narrow slice, but man, if you're in that age range, it can really, really be a big deal as far as an advantage.
Yeah. Well, okay, so there's two other ways that you can easily access money if you're younger than 55. The first one, which I want you to detail some more, is if you happen to have a 457 plan instead of a 401k. So talk through that.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that one up. Living here in the Madison area, we've got a lot of state employees, and in Wisconsin, the deferred compensation plan that's run by the state is technically a 457 plan.
Mm.
And in general, right, it works like a 401k, like a 403b, sort of again, generically speaking, kind of the same thing, right?
Right.
Yes, but that 457 plan, it's a quirk in the retirement planning laws that those plans do not have that 10% penalty before age 59 and a half at all, right?
Mhm.
So you could be 40 and you don't have to leave that same employer. So if somebody's working around here for the state or for the university and has access, has money in their 457 plan, in Wisconsin, that's the Wisconsin Deferred Compensation Plan, leaving that money there, I can take that money out at any age with no penalty. I still have to pay taxes on it,
Right.
right? But there's no penalty. And as you know, Bridget, my wife left the state 5 years ago now already. Time flies, and we left that money in her 457 plan because she's not 55, she's not 59 and a half. But we can always, and we don't plan to use it, but we have access to it without any penalties if we ever need to it. But again, similar to that 401k age 55 rule, if we roll that to an IRA, we lose the opportunity.
Yeah.
So it has to stay in the 457, but then you don't have age 55. You don't have when you retire. It's any time for that 457 plan.
Okay, and that now we've got one, the equal substantially equal payments, which you've got some more experience with too. So
Yeah, yeah,
let's, because this is available again, just like the 457, if you guys happen to have one of those, geez, you can take money out without a penalty anytime. Talk to me, talk through. Now, it's interesting to me because I've had helped hundreds of people retire, but we've
yeah,
never, and many of them early, but we've never actually used the substantially equal payments. And it's because usually people have money in different buckets. And so if they're planning, if their goal is to retire early, they save some money in taxable accounts and they don't put it all in their 401ks or whatever, because they know,
right.
okay, but a lot of times people aren't planning for this. So, it just happens. They get laid off and they're not, or they've got a health crisis or whatever. So there's plenty of times where it just happens. But again, in my experience, it's actually less often than you would think, but nice to know that it's there. So talk
Right.
through substantially equal payments.
Yeah, substantially equal periodic payments. Rule 72T for the tax geeks that want to look that stuff up, right? And what that means, it's exactly what you described as. And I just want to point out that if you're planning for this, right? Like if we're planning to retire at 53 or something like
Right.
this, we build up other sources. But how the studies show people tend to retire earlier than they plan to. Not
Right.
always, right? But it's not uncommon, right?
Right.
And what that rule is, and I'll just say it's complicated, right? So you've got to dig in. Don't take,
Yes.
you never take anything we say here as advice, but especially not this sort of specific thing. But what it says is that, listen, I can take money out of a retirement plan of any sort, IRA. I can do this. I have to take out a certain amount, and there's calculators that tell you what the amount is. It's like taking the required minimum distribution once you get to age 73 or age 75 in retirement. So there's a formula that says, hey, you have to take out at least this much, which is in some fashion an even amount over your life expectancy. And so then we have to set it. And if it's, I was just looking it up for somebody recently that, and it's based on interest rates and some other factors. But if somebody has $100,000 in an IRA that they want to take, use Rule 72T, they can take out something like $6,000 a year. I shouldn't say can. They have to take out something like $6,000 a year if they want to use the 72T rules.
Okay.
And then they have to take that money out each and every year for at least 5 years or until they're over 59 and a half. Right.
When
So
they
if
can do
somebody's
whatever they want.
50,
Right.
they got to do it for 10 years. If somebody's
Okay.
56, they got to do it for 5 years.
Okay. Great.
Um, and so again, there's ways you can do this. That's the one big takeaway I want to leave people. But especially with 72T, there's some restrictions. You can't stop taking those distributions. You have to do it each year, right? So it's not ideal,
For
but
5
it's
years. Right.
also a way that you can access money, right?
Right, right. Another thing I want to mention is that we're trying to avoid penalties, early withdrawal penalties. So that's what we're really trying to avoid here. And another way to avoid some or all of the early withdrawal penalties, to take a look at what the exceptions are. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and see which exceptions you fit. So often people, at least some of their things that they're spending money on is medical expenses. And I believe that's an exception. Now the exceptions change, but they usually get expanded. They usually go more exceptions, not less. So you want to look up the list and see what are the exceptions and make sure you just take advantage of that. And at least, so let's say you take out $10,000. Okay. Well, gee whiz, you could have easily spent $10,000 on medical expenses. So that might be a great exception. But also, let's say you take out $10,000, but you spent $5,000 on medical expenses. Well, then you'd only have to pay the penalty on the part that didn't meet the exception. But there's a lot of exceptions. So
that's right.
It's worth taking a look at those exceptions. And all of what we're talking about is giving, I would say that if you're in a situation, it makes a lot of sense to talk to a CPA or other tax preparer type and do some tax planning. And it's probably going to be worth it, because there's ways to get around these penalties, not necessarily like legally.
Right.
You need you probably can use some guidance to do it.
That's absolutely right. I'll tell you, Bridget, I'll throw out one more thing before we wrap up here, is in talking about like, how do we access this money without paying penalties, right? So there's some ways, there's some tools that not many people know about, but also keep in mind that when somebody needs money from their retirement plan before 59 and a half, oftentimes what that means is that they don't have income from other sources. I've lost my job and my income is going to be very low this year.
Right.
So it's not always, we like to avoid the penalties, but sometimes taking money out and paying the penalty is a smart thing to do.
Right.
And if you think about, if I put money into my 401k plan and I save 24 cents on the dollar because I was in the 24% tax bracket, and now I need to take out some money and I'm paying 10% taxes plus a 10% penalty, it might still be a decent deal. So it's just, it's like sort of like the tax planning idea is financial planning too, is take a look at what you're trying to accomplish, not just avoiding that 10% penalty, and that'll put you in some good positions.
Right. Absolutely. So it seems like a great time to wrap it up. Hi, I'm Bridget Sullivan Mermal. I've got a fee-only financial planning practice in Chicago, Illinois.
And I'm John Shear. I've got a fee-only financial planning practice in Middleton, Wisconsin. If you like what you hear on our show, Bridget and I are both taking new clients. We'd love to hear from you, but we're also both members of the Alliance of Comprehensive Planners. And if you'd like to find an advisor that's local to your area that thinks in a similar way that we do, you can check out acplanners.org.
And don't forget to subscribe.